I'll be honest, I used to hate scary movies. For the longest time, the genre evaded me. Why would you ever pay for this? Why do you want to watch something terrifying? And I would close my eyes and refuse to watch horror movies and was very successful at it for 20 years until this October when all of a sudden, spooky. As it turns out with horror, the only thing you have to fear is fear itself. Just like if a comedian were to tell you why the joke was funny, it would cease to be funny, or if a magician showed you how a trick happened, it would cease to be magical. A lot of describing horror kind of takes away its power over you. It makes things seem a little bit goofy. So, for all of you out there who are trying to find a way to make horror make some kind of sense, here are some boxes that we've put them into. Let's go into why we fear the unknown, and its many faces through a taxonomy of the monster, something that Noel Carroll theorizes in his book. In his book, The Philosophy of Horror, Noel Carroll develops this idea of art horror, and it's a genre of horror and media. It's not artsy horror flicks that are somehow shot better than other horror movies. It's simply the ability to trigger a simulated form of terror in the viewer, the reader, the chills or thrills feeler. Like that. So what makes these monsters terrifying? Well, first, it's the physical threat of the character's face. It's dangerous. And it doesn't need to be necessarily physically dangerous, but it could be psychologically dangerous, or even spiritual or morally dangerous. It's not enough, however, that it's just threatening, but it also must be revolting and disgusting and impure. It's the secondary aspect that we're going to focus on to create a category of 5 monsters. So let's start off with our first monster. As the name implies, these monsters are combinatory in nature. They straddle a binary, like Frankenstein's monster is both made up of dead people and... It's alive! Oh, it's alive! It's alive! It's alive! They are both one thing and another that we deem as unnatural. Zombies and ghosts are both alive and dead. Damien and the Antichrist is both child Antichrist. Reagan is both herself and the demon. This concept extends to all kinds of human plus animal hybrids.
It has been established that persons who have recently died have been returning to life and committing acts of murder. A widespread...
Fusion monsters exist beyond boundaries. They stay there forever. The multiplicity is both the point as well as how it is most often presented, usually in the most grotesque way possible.
God. This is God.
Society is all about boundaries and the pre-approved transgression of those boundaries. Meanwhile, fusion monsters disregard all of the most seemingly uncrossable boundaries. The spiritual, biological, or the ontological. Like Fred or Frank or the Blob, they are 2 things at once. It is possible to unfuse, such as the case of an exorcism perhaps, but this takes away what makes this monster terrifying.
Ghosts! You guys better get another routine because those sheets, they don't work.
You saw me standing alone.
Jesus Christ!
Related, yet distinct from the fusion monster, comes our next type of monster. If the fusion monster is 2 things simultaneous in one single entity, then the fission monster is one entity that is interpreted in 2 or more different ways. The contradictory elements of the monster are distributed in different, yet still metaphysically related identities. Consider every werewolf ever. Man by day, wolf by night, and a noticeable binary between them and their actions. This is usually portrayed in one of two ways. Temporal fission, which, like Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde, or werewolves, has some kind of distinction in time of different people, one monster. The other kind of fission, special fission, includes
Once one in body, and perhaps one in mind. Danielle and Dominique, one loving, the other...
where the monster was one, it became two, or different functioning entities. Characters don't transform, but multiply over space.
It's no use, Jekyll. You better come quietly.
If you've ever seen a bug and you looked at them and you thought, wow, that's super creepy, what if they were the size of a bus? Magnification monsters are basically this. They're what the name implies. Creatures that were already really unsettling to be around, but made impossibly huge by radiation or voodoo magic or something or other. Rats, spiders, scorpions, gorillas, or...
Attack of the 50-foot woman!
Huge. Huge.
Are you kidding?
With magnification monsters, what is usually pretty off-putting naturally at its normal size is literally blown out of proportion. The reverse of this is a different kind of monster.
Attention. Attention. This is Miss Schuster. Please listen very carefully. A swarm of killer bees is coming this way.
This type of horror can be considered more subjective than most, as it heavily relies on the viewer's opinion of the creature in question. For example, I really don't find bees this scary, but rats, multiple rats, are really terrifying. This doesn't mean that it's no longer an art horror monster because it ceases to be horrific for me. It just means that which makes it terrifying, or the victim scared, ceases to create a similar feeling for me. Now, there are some monsters who are not outwardly scary. Not all monsters are terrifying or look bizarre or gooping from the eyes. Sometimes it's just a feeling of creepiness, weirdness, or that they're just off. The poster child for this category is
Dracula.
I am Dracula. I am Dracula.
Ich bin Graf Dracula.
I am Dracula.
I am Count Vladislaus Dracula.
I am Count.
Dracula is considered a good example of this because he's charming. He's not really that off-putting when you look at him. He's a good host. He's well dressed. We don't come to find Dracula actually monstrous until we learn that he sucks blood out of human beings. It is what he does, the background, the way that other characters feel about what it is he's doing, that makes him a monster, not his own physical appearance. The same rule applies to...
Hello?
These monsters are not physically grotesque, but the mask that they wear is what makes them grotesque. It's what they do when they wear the mask, and the fact that they can so easily take off the mask and basically look like us. What is it about these 5 particular monsters that actually helps individuals in society deal with the fears, anxieties, and frustrations that they see? Why do we watch all these horror movies? I'll leave you to think about that.